There has been a lot of talk recently in the games industry about Battle Royale games. It's the new in thing. Fortnite is doing great, Battlegrounds has just released their new map onto the test environment and also finally been released onto Xbox as well. Other companies are starting to get on board the BR hype train too. That being said, there is one game that may be getting a Battle Royale mode that you wouldn't necessarily expect. Counter-Strike Global Offensive. Now let me start by saying that nothing is confirmed yet, and certainly nothing has been announced. These rumours and theories are based on updates to CSGO from way back in May of 2006. That's right, well over a year and a half ago. That means that if this is true and it's a real thing, then Valve have been planning this well before Battlegrounds was actually released. In fact, you could argue that Valve perhaps saw the trend before it was even a trend, although they certainly haven't been very fast to act on it, and of course we've got to remember that Battle Royale was a mod before Battlegrounds, and also games like H1Z1 with King of the Hill came before PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. Okay, so the evidence, for want of a better term, comes from digging around the code of CSGO in various updates. There's a fantastic YouTube channel called Valve News Network, and they did a great job of breaking it all down. I'll link their video down in the description below as well. But essentially everything from references, console commands, console variables, and actual models, sound files, down to engine code can highlight new features coming to the game. Within all of this, references were found to a number of things that don't tally up with how Counter-Strike Global Offensive operates itself at the moment. Things like a compound bow, adrenaline shots, breaching charges, a sonar pulse, even fists. Now none of those things are relevant to the base Counter-Strike Global Offensive game at all, and unless it's due for a huge gameplay overhaul, then they aren't going to be either. Let's be real, CSGO isn't going to get a bow and arrow anytime soon. At least I hope not. That being said, some of you may think that it's in relation to the co-op missions that have now been around in CSGO for some time. That could be true of some items. For instance, there are references to heavy and medium armour, perhaps that's for co-op. It certainly could be, but then we start getting into weird territory for CS. For instance, fists. Why would you ever need to have your fists out for a game of CSGO? Even in co-op, that makes very little sense. So playing devil's advocate, we could even say that maybe Valve are trying to add some sort of single player component to CSGO like they did all that time ago with Condition Zero. Remember how well that went? Yeah, I don't think that would be the case either. But then this is where it gets really interesting. We get actual references to something called survival, the plot thickens, references to commands such as survival phase change or survival phase length, radius scale, survival crate spawn. These all start to sound very familiar, don't they? In a Battle Royale game you need a zone, a radius with a certain scale that moves between phases and pushes players inwards together. All of a sudden, this is starting to seem a lot more like a setup for a Battle Royale game mode of CSGO. And then when the new Inferno dropped, there were even further details unearthed. A new map called Survival Island was referenced. So now we've got references to a survival mode and also references to an actual map called Survival Island. Also references were found for a survival crate prop and, more importantly, parachuted supply crates. Even things like medic kits, night vision goggles and drones have been referenced in recent updates. So to recap, we've got references to a survival mode, the references to a survival island, as well as parachuting supply drops and commands for radius scale, phase change and phase length. Of course, weapons such as bows and items that you wouldn't normally get in the base CSGO game like this. Put all that together and it sounds a lot like Valve are making a Battle Royale game for CSGO. But are they though? I mean, could this be a CSGO Battle Royale, or, you know, maybe even a separate Valve game that perhaps resembles CSGO in some way? How would it look? How would it play? Well, let's just get into that now. First up, I have to say that a Battle Royale game with CSGO's gun mechanics would be an interesting starting point. I love the gunplay of CSGO, especially the rifles and the sniper rifles. That being said, one shot from a standard rifle to the head might be a bit much in a BR game. CSGO is of course designed as a 5v5 competitive game. It was never designed with high player counts in mind, although you could throw 30 people into a deathmatch right now and it would handle it just fine. That being said, the maps are small at the moment and, in fairness, not particularly graphically demanding. So does that mean we'd be looking at, say, a mode that's 20 to 25 players or something on a much bigger typical BR scale? We know Valve is more than capable of achieving something like that if they wanted to. After all, they are in a similar position to Epic, where they created Fortnite BR. They make the engine so they can call all the shots and pull all the strings to make stuff happen. Source has proved itself to be a fantastic engine that stood the test of time, and let's not forget, Source 2 is yet to be properly tested. Dota 2, let's say, does use Source Engine 2, but it isn't that much of a graphically intense game. It's just that it uses the power of Source 2, so we're yet to see what it's actually capable of. Imagine if in a few months' time Valve just dropped the bombshell that they're releasing a new BR game based off CSGO on the Source 2 engine. That would send some big shockwaves through the gaming industry, let me tell you. We've long expected Left 4 Dead 3 to be a release title of sorts for Source 2, and I think we've all given up hope now that that's going to be Half-Life 3. It seems though that Source 2 has just drifted in though, already implemented in Dota 2 without being able to properly see it in action. When Source first hit, we got to see CS Source and then Half-Life 2 at the same time, pushing it forward. Perhaps this time it will be a CSGO BR game instead, but Left 4 Dead 3 is far more likely than Half-Life 3. That is always going to be a pipe dream. Another massive positive for this potential game being on the Source 2 engine is that Source games are renowned for running very well, even on lower spec systems. Obviously games like PUBG, one of the biggest problems they have is optimization, and still you need a pretty beefy PC to get a decent frames per second. Even then, at certain areas on the map, you're going to be hitting low frame rates. However, Source games, Portal, Dota, CSGO, Half-Life, whatever they are, they always tend to run really, really well. Therefore, if you're a consumer that wants to play a BR game, but maybe you can't run Fortnite and you can't run Battlegrounds, a potential BR game on the Source engine would probably run well on your system, be really scalable, and that could become your #1 BR game that you play regularly. Also, in terms of netcode, I mean, CSGO servers can go up to 128 tick as far as I know, so that's a very fast refresh rate for the game, so you would assume that the netcode is going to be very good in a potential CSGO BR game. Think about modding and workshop content as well. If I remember correctly, PUBG actually said that they're going to have modding in the game about 6 months after release. The game has just officially been released, so maybe in 6 months' time, modding will start to roll out. But, you know, it could be delayed. We don't know if they're going to control what's allowed to be modded or not. Whereas Source Engine games, typically games like TF2, CS, I mean, people make maps for them, they make skins. The modding opportunities for a potential BR mode could be huge on the Source Engine. Community created content and maps, that could just become a vast trove of new content for people to test out and play. On the flip side though, you have to think about stuff like a climbing and vaulting system. CSGO doesn't have that. CS games never really have. They didn't need to. The CS maps are very specifically designed for certain lanes and set bomb sites, and they work in their own respect. However, if you were to have a survival island map, you would assume that it's going to have multiple levels and lots of verticality to it, so would Valve then have to create some sort of vaulting and climbing system to compensate for that? Or would this be a very different type of BR game? Just because PUBG has been so popular, it doesn't mean that every single BR game that comes along has to copy the formula. There can be some separate idea or spin-off involved to keep it fresh and interesting. It doesn't always have to be a carbon copy of what PUBG's done. CSGO is still a hugely popular title, but Battle Royale has somewhat taken over recently. The popularity of Steam and in general viewership has fallen for CSGO and risen for other games like Fortnite and Battlegrounds. Sure, that might not stay forever, but Valve could certainly compete with those games if they really wanted to. Just look at what they've done with CSGO and Dota for the skins. Most players love skins. Some of the CSGO skins are worth hundreds if not thousands of pounds. At the end of the day, something is worth what someone else is willing to pay for it. The CSGO and Dota 2 crate system provides cosmetics that players want and a crazy income stream for Valve at the same time. It's arguably done a lot better than most other games. So if Valve had a BR game right now, you know that the demand for cosmetics would be insane. In fact, they could release the game for free and still make a fortune. After all, CSGO is not a full-priced game, and it doesn't need to be. When I saw that video by the Valve News Network, it really interested me and got me excited. I hope that something does actually come of it though, and according to that channel, the most recent update that mentions survival came out in early December, so this certainly isn't dead code, it seems. Something going on behind the scenes, and while this could in theory just be a big co-op related activity, the amount of time that this has clearly been worked on, as well as the references to zone radius and times, just screams Battle Royale. That being said, how many times have we had Left 4 Dead 3 and Half-Life 3 teased in images or game code in the past few years, but just nothing has come of it? I suppose we have to be patient and not read too much into this right now, but I think with this one we will see some activity in the next few months. The question is, if Valve have been working on this since 2016, why is it taking them so long? I guess Valve time really is a thing. So there we have it, guys. Let me know what you think could be awesome or bad about a CSGO style Battle Royale experience. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, that would be great. If you didn't enjoy it, dislike, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you in the next one.